Hey, so we're about to dive into one of the most mysterious, most debated books ever written, the Book of Revelation. But we're going to look at it from a completely different angle, one that might just flip everything you thought you knew on its head.
Seriously, what if it's not? What if all the stuff we associate with it, the beasts, the plagues, the end of the world, what if it's all based on a huge misunderstanding? What if the key to cracking this ancient code isn't in tomorrow's news, but in a story that's already happened?
So you've got the popular view, right? The Revelation is a roadmap to the future. But there's this alternative theory, put forward by author Noel Robertson Platt, that says it's actually an allegory of the past, specifically a super symbolic retelling of the Easter story. It suggests we've all been staring at this grand illusion when the reality was right there in the Gospels the whole time.
According to this theory, the Apostle John wasn't trying to write a prophecy at all. Instead, he was crafting this brilliant, complex defense of his faith against a really dangerous idea that was spreading in the first century. And he used the wild language of apocalypse to hide its true meaning right in plain sight. Okay, so this sets up the whole framework. An allegory has a hidden meaning, right? The apocalyptic visions in Revelation, that's the illusion. It's this mystical, totally otherworldly story on the surface. But, the theory goes, that illusion is there for a reason. It's constantly pointing us to the reality, which is the physical, historical, actual flesh and blood events of Jesus' final days on earth.
And the evidence for this starts right on page 1. Revelation 1:1 says it's a book about what must soon take place. Now hold that thought and jump over to Matthew 20. On the road to Jerusalem, Jesus tells his disciples exactly what will soon happen: his betrayal, his crucifixion, and his resurrection. The theory says this isn't some coincidence. This is the key that unlocks the entire book.
But you gotta ask, why write in such a complicated code? Why not just tell the story straight? Well, the answer seems to lie in a very specific real-world problem that John was up against at the end of the first century. And that threat was a heresy called Docetism. Now, these guys believed that Jesus wasn't really human. They claimed he was more like a phantom, a spirit, who only appeared to have a body, only seemed to suffer and die. You can imagine for John, who was an eyewitness to all this was a devastating attack on the very core of his faith.
And if you look at his other writings from around the same time, his response is just crystal clear. He hammers this point home again and again, emphasizing the physical reality of Jesus. He's basically saying, listen, we heard him with our own ears, we saw him with our own eyes, we literally touched him with our hands. This was not an illusion. And in this view, Revelation is his ultimate masterpiece in that very same fight.
So the idea is that John used these apocalyptic illusions, all the strange visions and symbols, to drive home the reality of the physical Easter events. It's like he built this fortress of metaphor to protect a historical truth. Let's take a look at how this actually works.
Okay, let's zoom in on the famous 7 trumpets in Revelation chapter 8. According to this theory, each trumpet blast isn't some future disaster. Nope. Each one is a symbolic echo of something Jesus actually said or did during his final week.
Take this, for example. You've got the vision of an angel at a golden altar with a censer full of incense. That's the illusion. So what's the supposed reality? Well, it's the story of the woman at Bethany who anoints Jesus' physical body with a flask of incredibly expensive perfume. Think about it: a golden censer and an alabaster flask, fragrant incense and fragrant perfume. The parallels are pretty striking. And here's the crucial part, the why. This vision wasn't about a literal angel in heaven. It was a symbolic way to shout from the rooftops that a real woman anointed a real physical body. It was an act you could see and smell, the absolute opposite of the ghost-like Jesus the Docetists were talking about. Okay, now get this. Look at the second trumpet. The vision in Revelation is of a burning mountain being thrown into the sea. Then go back and listen to Jesus' actual words during Passion Week, recorded in Matthew. If you say to this mountain, be cast into the sea, it will be done. I mean, the verbal echo there is almost a perfect match. So what this interpretation suggests is that all 7 of those trumpet blasts are actually allegories for 7 great utterances that Jesus made, powerful, unforgettable things he said during that last week. John, the eyewitness, is testifying to what he physically heard, again, grounding the whole story in tangible, audible reality. But look, you could say that single parallels are just coincidences, right? Fair enough.
But the most compelling part of this whole theory is what it calls the smoking gun, a clear sequential pattern that maps the climax of Revelation directly onto the climax of the Easter story itself.
Check out this progression. It proposes a pretty radical substitution. The idea is if you replace the evil figures in these later chapters with Christ, who, in Christian theology, takes on the world's sin, the narrative fits perfectly. Revelation 16, with all its bowls of wrath, becomes the suffering of the Passion. Chapter 17 lines up with his death. Chapter 18 becomes his burial. And chapter 20 becomes the resurrection. It follows the exact chronology of the Gospels.
The argument here is that this is no accident. It's way too specific, too sequential. It's presented as the intentional, deliberate architecture of the entire book, just hidden for centuries. And honestly, once you see that pattern, it is really hard to unsee it.
So, what's the big picture here? What does this all mean? Well, if this theory holds any water, it completely reframes how we read the book of Revelation. It stops being a crystal ball for the future and becomes this incredibly powerful theological statement about the past.
So let's boil it down. What are the key takeaways? This reading turns Revelation into a proclamation of gospel history. It becomes a tool that was specifically designed to defend the physical reality of Jesus. What we thought was prophecy gets reinterpreted as powerful eyewitness testimony. And all those wild, baffling symbols get transformed into allegories for real historical events. Really, the crucial point is this. The whole purpose of the book just shifts entirely. It's no longer about a far-off, scary future. Instead, it becomes this intricate, symbolic masterpiece celebrating the ultimate reality and the victory of the Easter story, the single most foundational event in all of Christianity.
And that just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If the book of Revelation is actually a story about what has already been accomplished, instead of a script for what is still to come, well, how does that change its power, its message, and its meaning for us today?